We've got market watcher Scott Shutledy. We've also got Independent Women's Forum's Patrice Lee Onwuka. Patrice, what is going on here? What's driving this?
Well, I have to wonder if the midterm elections, some of those key races are still a factor, and the market is wondering, okay, well, what's going to happen? Although we generally know that the House will be flipped into Democratic control and the Senate kept in Republican grips, but whether that balance of power is going to be stronger for Republicans in the Senate, and whether the president's agenda, particularly those pro-growth strategies that have really helped the market, help businesses, and help small business optimism rise. Well, whether that's going to be overturned, whether that's going to be stopped in the future over the next 2 years.
I also, on technology, Scott, I mean, whatever the political back and forth is, and I don't doubt that it could potentially be in play here, I am wondering what is going on with technology. Just then you think it's had, enough of a beating when Apple fell into correction territory, and then now the steam's toward bear market territory when Amazon and Alphabet and some of these others are feeling the same chill. What's happening?
Well, nothing's really changed for those companies in the last 6 months. That's the problem. And nothing really, except for maybe Powell's comments October the 3rd, sent this market lower. So we haven't had any new surprises. There's been nothing out there that's going to say this is the catalyst or that's the big catalyst. Yes, today, a little negative news on GE. We had some issues with Apple's and their demand. But at the end of the day, we sold off for no new news. We rallied back on no new news. And I think that what I heard in the dealing rooms last week was we weren't quite done going lower here because we had the NASDAQ hit a 15% correction line, but the other two indices hadn't, and they need to kind of go down there, take a look before we can call some capitulation and get comfortable with the market again. I don't think anybody's in charge here. It's just a quiet day, and the guys that are in charge are the technicians.
All right. Well, that's a good reason to maybe step back. But, Patrice, I'm also noticing that Axios is reporting today that the president might up the trade ante vis-a-vis not only the Chinese, but potentially even all over again with Canada. He thinks that more tariffs on overseas-made cars has proven to be the best negotiating tactic you could possibly have. Now, whether that's just bluster, it reminds a lot of folks, as if they need reminding here, that we've still got serious trade issues to deal with.
We do. I think the auto industry has always been a target for this administration and the White House. Looking at some of the other areas for tariffs have been some ways successful and at least renegotiating some trade deals. And so it wouldn't surprise me if again, he's going to try and use, the auto industry as a way to gain some more leverage. Whether this turns out to be a good thing, I think for the year, earlier in the year when we first heard these tariffs announced, we thought, well, we would see some or feel some effects in the market as well as consumers later in the year. And we haven't felt that, Neil, which is really interesting. And so if auto prices are not affected, if again consumers' pockets are not affected, and in fact they continue to feel confidence, then these tariffs the White House may see that this is a victory in terms of using tariffs for some sort of for their legislative and their fiscal end goals.
Yeah, and I should explain just to make clear here, and I think what the president is saying, he noticed that he made a terrific progress with the Canadians on a host of other trade issues when he was bringing autos into the mix, and that it extracted concessions from the Canadians. So his hope is, or at least that was the inference, I think, Scott, that he would do the same with the Chinese. Now, I don't know what that materializes, but it did signal the markets that seem to be always waiting and hoping to resolve this trade, quagmire. It ain't happening fast. What do you think?
No, it's not happening as fast as I'd like to get rid of the overhanging issue. But let's just remember, markets are allowed to go down. We have some euphoric rallies on some little whispers of maybe some, headway made with the Chinese as far as the tariffs go there. So we can sell off on really no new news, a little bit of bad news from GE and Apple. It just does not surprise me. And I want everybody to make sure that they're calm, because this is just what happens when you have a holiday. I think we have the technicians in charge today. There's a little bit of a negative mood about the markets. So, those things can happen. But at the end of the day, the dollar's strong because the U.S. economy is strong. Look at our numbers. I think that we're going to have a great shopping season. There's a lot to celebrate. So just hold your horses, relax, and let this play out.
Well, all right.
I agree with that.
We'll hold those horses. Let me just say that it is a market holiday for the Treasury sector. Of course, you can't trade in bonds today. By extension, it really does lead to currencies as well, because very, very little traffic in that arena. So it's always just stocks, and Scott is right to point that out. We can have exaggerated conditions on a day like this, Patrice, but one of the things the president has been citing among the factors behind the sell-off is the Democrats and these ongoing investigations that are multiplying as we speak, saying that the prospect of presidential harassment by the Dems is causing the stock market big headaches. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't think he's wrong to say that Democrats are going to be harassing him, and not just him, but the entire administration. I mean, when we think about some of the other industries that are going to be affected, housing, banking, these are prime areas that Maxine Waters has already said that she's going to be taking a fine tooth comb to.
Right.
You know, and so these are going to be industries that are going to be hit. We already have felt in the housing market that there's some softening, and so I think when you consider both the president being harassed, but also some of the other agencies and cabinet officials also, facing subpoenas, facing interrogation, facing, constant questioning of policies and potential rollbacks of policies, then I think the market is going to start to consider that.
What about interest rates? The president, Scott, has been, very, very open to formally criticizing the Federal Reserve at every opportunity he gets to say that, they're trying to rain on a party. And squelch whatever potential and growth we see in the economy. And it's beginning to put, or is deemed to put, pressure on the Federal Reserve to rethink just the pace of rate increases. Do you agree with that?
I hate to say this, but I kind of do. I mean, I'm on a little bit of an island on this on my own because, 30 years in this business, I've only ever used to see interest rate rises when we were trying to cool off an already overheating economy, right? Or get out in front of an economy that looks about to overheat. Now, I can't tell you that our economy's overheating or looks like it's going to overheat. Yes, are we having inflation creep in with wages? Yeah, a little bit, but it's not running away from us. So I sometimes think, and if you go back over the last 80 or 100 years, the real reason we go into recessions are a lot of times because of the Fed. And I think that's why Donald Trump's bringing that up. So I think the Fed needs to make sure that they have a clear mandate of what they need to do as far as keeping things in check, but not trying to get out over their skis and worry about the boogeyman under the bed when he might not really be there.
All right. I know this is going to look political. I'm trying not to make it look political, but I also see the president pre-positioning for whatever happens. That don't put it on me. Maybe put it on Democrats in those investigations. Maybe put it on the Federal Reserve and willy-nilly hiking rates in the face of no justification to hike those rates. But whatever happens, bad at least, don't pin it on Donald J. Trump.
Well, I think we've seen the president does like to kind of hedge his bets, so to speak, or at least, make sure, a little bit of deflection. There's nothing wrong in calling out what Democrats are already planning and saying that they're planning on doing. There's nothing wrong in looking at, what's happening with the markets and saying, okay, this is going to be tough. And I think when he was campaigning,
is that new news? You know what I mean? Like,
it's
the
really
idea
not.
that the investigations are going to ensue. I mean, that I don't think is a shocker, but is he just pre-positioning that or raising a legitimate fear?
I think a little bit of both. I mean,
Okay.
it's ridiculous when you hear these Democrats who, Nancy Pelosi came out on election night and talking about being conciliatory and working across the board. And then the next day we see, some of those other Democratic leaders talking about what they plan on doing. So, I think he is at least saying, hey, American people, don't be surprised if this is what's going to happen. I told you about this on the campaign trail, and here it's already going to begin. And so, but at the same time, I do think he is trying to protect the next 2 years of his legacy and going into his 2020 campaign. He's already preparing people for what could be, either a gridlock in Congress, nothing gets done, or very little at all getting done.
All right, real quickly, Scott, little getting done might be welcome, though, on Wall Street, wouldn't it?
That's what history would tell us, that gridlock, the market likes gridlock. So, look, yes, there's a lot of toings and froings. If you would have known where the market would have gone election night till today, you would have given your right arm, right? I mean, it's an amazing feat of what we've seen that market do.
Maybe the left arm.
But But you have to realize where we've been, right? So
Understood.
This is okay. Everybody relax, and everything will sort itself out, especially if we have gridlock.
All right, guys, I want to thank you both very, very much.